Hello magical hands and welcome to the channel. If it's your first time, hi, my name is Jessica, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for coming back. For today's tutorial, we are going to be making this oversized button down shirt, and in this video you also get to learn how to make the hidden button cover. You get to learn how to make the collar and also the oversized button down shirt. If this is something you're interested in learning, make sure to keep on watching. For the fabric, I use a cotton fabric, and this very cotton fabric I used is very thick. I've not used any cotton fabric like this one before. And for the quantity, I used 2.5 yards to make both the shirt and the shorts, and that's because I couldn't get more than that because this was the last quantity of fabric in the store. So if you're looking forward to making this and you need my advice on other fabric options, I would say you should get a cotton fabric, be it lightweight or thick like this one. And without any further ado, let's get into the tutorial of today proper. So I'll be making use of the regular blackboard chalk, and that's because it's more visible. So I have this piece of fabric here. This side I folded it into two, of which I'll be cutting it out. I'm going to be starting with my front piece. So first thing I will mark is 1 inch, and I will just make a straight line across the 1 inch. After I have gotten the 1 inch, I will mark another 1 inch, and I will still make a straight line across that point. And I'll proceed again to mark the third 1 inch, okay, and I'll make a straight line across that point. So now I've marked 3 inches already, and that 3 inches is going to be for my button band. So all my measurement is going to start from this last line here. So I'm going to mark from my shoulder to my bust point, and I'll make a straight line across that point. Next, I will mark from my shoulder to my waistline, and I'll make a straight line across that point. And the third line will be from my shoulder to my full length, which is your desired length where you want the blouse to stop, of which I'm using 30 inches. On the starting line, I'm going to mark my shoulder measurements divided by 2, which I'm using 7.5 inches. But I want this to be wide enough. I don't want the shoulder width to be very small. So I proceeded to add extra 1.5 inch. That's me working with a total of 9 inches for my shoulder width. So let's say instead of using 16, I am using 19 inches because I want it to be wide. You know, like making a man's shirt, you need the shoulder to be broad. Next, I will mark my neck width, and I'm going to mark 3 inches for the neck width. And then I'm going to move back to this my new shoulder line that I've already made very broad. I'm going to mark downwards 1 inch, and that 1 inch is going to be for my shoulder slope. So I'll just go ahead and I'll connect a slanted line from the neck width to meet the new shoulder line that we have right there. Next, I'll mark downwards my round armhole measurements divided by 2, which is 8, but I'll add extra 1 inch for ease. So I'm going to be marking 9 inches downwards, and I'm going to be making sure that 9 inches is sitting at the width of the shoulder measurement, so that by the time I connect it downwards, the line is going to be very straight. So once I connect the line, I'm going to extend it further to the right side just as seen. I will find the midpoint of my armhole line, which is 4.5, and at that midpoint there, I'm going to mark inwards half an inch. So that half an inch there, I'm going to use it to curve my armhole line. So I'll place my ruler such that a part of it is touching the shoulder width, a part is touching the half an inch, and a part is touching that armhole line that we extended. And in one swipe, I will get my armhole curve. So over to this part here, I'm going to mark downwards 3 inches, and that's going to be the neck depth that I will use. So I'll go ahead and I'll create a curve from the 3 inches that we have at the neck width area to the 3 inches that we have at the lower part, and I'm going to have my neckline. And I'll extend that line straight into the button band that we already mapped out earlier. So I'll move to my bust points line, and I'm going to take my round bust measurement divided by 4. Make sure you're marking your exact measurements first. I'll move to the waistline, and I'll take my round waist measurements divided by 4. I'll move to the hip line, and I'll take my exact hip measurements divided by 4. So I'll go ahead and I'll start connecting all these lines together. Make sure that you're taking these measurements from where the bottom band allowance ends. So now I'll go back again to the bust point, and I'll start adding my ease allowance, of which I am using 2 inches. So you can use more if you want this to be more big, or you can even use less if you don't want it to be very oversized. So I'm using 2 inches for ease. I will connect my ease allowance just as seen, and I will make sure to connect it into the armhole line in a slanted form and not in a straight form. Now I will proceed to start adding my sewing allowance, which I am using only half an inch, and I'll just connect it up as seen. Now I'll go ahead and start cutting everything out just exactly as you have seen me mapping it out on the fabric. So before anything, I will start working on the bottom band. So I'm going to start working with this particular piece that already has the chalk. I folded the first 1 inch that I already chalked and I gave this a really good press. So just for a closer view, I'm going to zoom this so you see how I folded the remaining pieces. So I'm going to fold in the already folded 1 inch and it's going to look exactly like this, just as easy as it is. This is basically everything that I did. I did not have to worry about the fabric fraying because that side of the fabric is already weaved. It won't fray, so I don't have to worry about like hemming that part. So this is what it looks like. If I lift up this folded part here, you will see that another part is down there. That is going to be where I will have my buttonholes, and this top part is going to cover it. So this makes us have the invisible button cover hole. So I'll take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew exactly on that chalked line. Now you're going to make sure that as you are sewing on the chalked line, is also sewing the folded bottom band underneath it too, like you're sewing all of them together at once. And this is a closer view of what it should look like. So if you look at this very well, you will see that the piece that is under the edge is already like properly weaved. So now I'm going to bring back the second front piece and I'm going to place this already sewn or already prepped front piece on it. So I'm going to try to make sure that they are equal at the center front area. So I'll fold this down and I'm going to give this a really good press. So that way I have already defined the bottom band area of it. So I'll use my pins to hold down that part that is already folded down, because that area is like where my bottom band should be. So this remaining allowance I have here, after pinning it, I'm going to fold it in just as seen and I'm going to sew close to the edge, and that's going to be like the bottom band of this particular side. So this is what they both look like, and now I'll move on to making the back piece. So I'm going to bring out my piece of fabric again and I'm going to iron this properly, and also I'm going to cut the back on a fold. I'll bring back one of my front piece and I'm going to hide the bottom band, because obviously the back piece does not need a bottom band. So I'll just use a pin to secure that bottom band in so that it is like hidden, and I'm going to place it on the folded fabric, okay, because I need to duplicate every single thing on the back piece again. So I'll go ahead with my chalk and I'll start marking the outlines of the side seam. And we are going to stop at the armhole line. So now at the shoulder area there, I'm going to start marking 3 inches upwards. You can decide to mark 2 inches or even 1.5 inch if you want, but I use 3 inches. So after I mark the 3 inches, I'm going to try to make sure that it's also in a slanted form. I will connect that line like that, and I will fold that 3 inches to meet the shoulder of the front piece as seen. I will just extend my armhole line forward, but this time around I will make sure that the armhole line is not as defined as that of the back piece, as that of the front piece. So after cutting this out, I'm going to fold down this extended back piece that I have, this new 3 inches, to meet the shoulder line of the front piece, and I'm going to secure that position with a good press. Okay, so once you iron it right, you see the tip of the shoulder area, you will see that it is falling off, it's having like a curve. Go ahead and trim it so that it will be very straight with your armhole line. So now we are going to mark our neck width, okay, and we're using the same neck width that we are using for the front piece on the back piece. But now for the neck depth, we are going to use 1.5 inch for the neck depth, just like taking your regular neck width, neck depth measurement. But this time around, we are going to mark it upwards just as seen, and we are going to create a curve, and this way we have the neckline. This method is basically mostly done for men's shirts, men's senator, I know, but that was the vibe I was going for. And now that I'm done getting the neckline, I will remove the front piece and we'll start working on the back piece. So now I'm going to start marking downwards 8 inches from the shoulder right there. Mind you, you can use 7 inches, you can use 9 inches, but I used 8 inches. So I'll rule out that line and I'm going to cut that part out. So once I cut it out, I'm going to bring from my pieces of fabric and I'm going to cut another exact piece of it, okay, more like a lining piece of it. So once I cut this piece out, I'm going to bring back the lower bodies and I'm going to join them up. Just watch closely and see how I'm going to pin this up. So basically what I did was to roll up the lower bodies and just make sure that it is placed on this top part, but making sure that the part where the joining is supposed to be are facing each other, like right face facing each other. Then I'll bring back that other piece and I'll place it on it, and I will just sew only those 3 pieces together first. After sewing it, this is what it looks like. So I'm going to just open it up just as seen, and now I'm going to start bringing my front pieces. I will place my front piece on it, that is right face facing the right face, and now I'm going to start rolling both the front and the back piece just as seen. So once I get to this top part, I'm going to bring back that lining piece and place it over all these rolled pieces again so that I can join all the shoulder lines together. After sewing the shoulder line, we are going to pull everything out and we are going to give this a good press. Definitely arrange it back, making sure it's placed right face facing the right face. But this time around, you're going to make sure that the lengths are equally placed, the armhole is equally placed. Just ignore the shoulder. Just make sure that everything is equally placed, and then we are going to sew up the sewing allowance that we added, which was 1/2 inch. After sewing up the sewing allowance, I'm going to start trimming one side of the allowance, okay? I'm going to trim it close to the sewing line. And we're going to try to professionally finish up the side seam. So I usually see this method on most of the shirts that we buy in the market. This is how the side seams are usually finished. So I just had to try it on with this shirt, and this is how it went. So I opened up the side seams just as seen after I've trimmed off one part, and I'm going to fold this other part that has not been trimmed yet to cover the other trimmed side just as seen, and I'm going to sew along the edge of it all the way down, and you should have something that would look like this. So I already went ahead and I'd already finished up the side seam of my sleeve as well. You guys, I lost the clip of when I was cutting out the sleeve, but basically you just have to cut like your regular sleeve. It's just like your normal sleeve, but I would advise that you don't make the tip of your sleeve very sharp, and I'm just going to explain that later on at the end. So I'll pin the sleeve to the armhole of the blouse, and I'll take this up to my sewing machine and I will attach the sleeve to the blouse itself. Also, in case I forgot to mention, make sure that the armhole and your shirt aligns together around the side seams that we did. So after sewing it up, this is what it was looking like on my body, right? You will notice how straight the shoulder line went, and that's because the shoulder was broad. And you will see that because of how thick this fabric is, right, it did not just fall down on my body. If you're looking at pictures like this, you will see how the shoulder, even though it was very very like wide, you see how it's still relaxed on the body. But I think because of how very thick this fabric is, and also considering that we doubled that top part, this refused to relax. So I have a similar shirt, but it's a silk fabric I used to make it. You will see how it relaxed more on my body. In order to make the collar, we'll need a piece of paper or pattern paper. We'll need all these writing materials right here. So we'll bring back the shirt piece and we're going to take the measurement of the neckline of the shirt, including the bottom band. Just make sure you take the measurement of everything that we have along the neckline there. I have 20 inches, so over to my pattern paper, I'm going to divide 20 inches by 2, which gives me 10 inches. So I'm going to mark 10 inches from one of the sides of the pattern paper as seen. Now I'll mark the midpoint of that 10 inches, which is 5 inches, and I'll just mark that point there. So at the area where I have the 10 inches marked, I will go up by 1 inch or even 1.5 inch if you want, and I'll create a curve from that new 1.5 inch to meet the midpoint of this pattern paper. I'll just define the line with my marker so it's more visible. Now I'm going to start determining how wide I want this collar stand to be. So I'm going to start marking 1 inch all through this part just as seen, and I'll connect it all as seen. After which I still went back to redefine the line again with my marker so it is very visible. So at that point there, I'm going to mark inwards 1 inch and I'll just make a straight line there. So I'll just go ahead with my free hand and I'll create a curve from the top part to the lower part just as seen. So this 1 inch I marked with my pen, I will extend it upwards just as seen. I will fold up that 1 inch that I have there on the collar stand, just fold it for now, and then I will place this in the opposite direction on the top part just as seen, and I'll just trace out the outlines of that part. Just a quick view of what I did. I just flipped this over and I traced out the outline, just making sure it stopped at that 1 inch area that I have there. Now I'm going to start marking the wideness of this top part. This top part is going to be my collar 4, and I'm going to start marking it, how wide I want it to be. So I'm using 2 inches and I'm marking 2 inches all through just as seen. But once I get to this line that I have here, I'm going to mark half an inch outside. Just make sure it is not straight. Just make sure you mark half an inch outside and connect it as seen. I'm going to transfer this to my fabric and I'm going to make sure that the fabric is on fold. So I'll just pin pattern paper on it as seen, and I'm going to start chalking my allowance, of which I'm using half an inch all round. So after chalking it out, I will cut it out. Also do same thing to the collar 4, and I'll also cut like lining pieces for all of them using the main fabric as the lining piece. So for one of them, I'm going to add paper stay. At this point, I would say it's optional because this fabric is very, very thick. I cannot even overemphasize how thick this fabric is, but I still added the paper stay. And make sure you're adding to only one side of the collar, either the lining or the main fabric. Just make sure you're adding to only one. So once I add it, I'm going to trim it off as seen. And also, it's only the collar stand that needs like a paper stay. You don't need to add to the collar 4. So we are going to start sewing, and we're going to start sewing with the collar 4. We'll place them right facing each other, and we are going to sew along the top parts that I've indicated here. So after sewing the collar, I'll cut along the top part that is sharp so that by the time I flip it over to the right face, it will relax properly at that part. So after flipping it over to the right face, I will give this a really good press and I'll still top stitch along that top part. So for my collar stand that already has the paper stay, I'm going to fold half an inch from the lower part. I'm going to fold the half an inch there and I'll iron this down. So I'll try and make sure that the collar stand and the collar stay are placed exactly at the midpoint line. So once I place them just as seen, I'll bring in the other parts and I'll place it on it, and I'll just sew up these three pieces together up to the curved point as seen. So this is what I usually do to get accuracy. I'll sew from the midpoint to one side, and then I'll go back and continue sewing from that midpoint to the other side. So after sewing, I ironed out the collar and it's time to join it to the main shirt. So I'm going to place it as seen. I'm going to place these ties from inside. So this is what it looks like after I've joined it together. I'm going to now flip it over and close up the other part. I'll just like top stitch because the other part has already been folded. Remember, we folded it earlier, and this is going to come out very neat. Trust me, forget the fact that this video was playing very fast. I took my time and I sewed very slowly so that everything will come out nice and perfect. And this is a closer view of what this top stitch that I did looks like on the other face. This came out really nice. So basically this is the last step, and I'm just going to show you guys another hack of how I hem the base. So I would have left the shirt like this, but I wanted it to have a touch of femininity. It was becoming so masculine, like what the heck. I know that was the vibe I was going for, but I wanted a touch of femininity, so I went ahead to trim the base of it. I just gave it a little bit of curve, and I'll show you how I hemmed it. So for the final hemming, what I did was I folded this like very small and I sewed very close to the edge. Because of the way this is curved, trying to hem the regular way will be difficult. It's going to make it uneven and rough. So this is the best method to hem even your flares. So after I did the first top stitch, I went ahead and I trimmed off what was left, the allowance that was left on it. I trimmed it off to very close to the sewing line, and it should be looking like this. Then I went further to fold it the second time, and I top stitch close to the sewing line that I already have there, and that was how I hemmed this. Everything came out very beautiful, very professional, very fine. And this brings us to the end of this tutorial here. If you learned something new, make sure to give us a thumbs up, make sure to like, make sure to share, because that will help you to recommend this channel to other people as well. And that being said, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.